As we enter the year 2025, everything has changed. In just a few years' time, the world has become familiar with terms such as deep state, cabal, swamp, information warfare, and mis- and disinformation. People started to see that their governments were just puppets of something bigger, something beyond their comprehension, something dark and sinister. People started to doubt the good intentions of their governments as they saw how worldwide agendas, such as Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, were rolled out, annihilating the farmers of the world, replacing real food with fake food. They saw how all kinds of technologies were forced upon them, annihilating any sense of privacy. Money was taken away, replaced with digital currency and digital IDs. Because of all of this and more, people started to wake up and see what a dystopian future our leaders had planned for us. The documentary series The Fall of the Cabal and the sequel to The Fall of the Cabal were made by Janet Ossebaard and me. We made them out of concern for humanity and to expose to the world where the Cabal is leading us. Millions and millions of people worldwide watched the series. In the end, it's these people who made the world ready to truly wake up, to claim its sovereignty and choose another path to the future. But that path is yet to be taken. Right now, we are in a transition period, a period in between timelines. We still need to understand the real core, the roots of the Cabal. Because only when we really go to the bottom of the rabbit hole will we understand the full picture. And with that knowledge, we can leave the old structures behind. We can then focus on a new world, a new system, more evolved, truly equal and transparent, with respect for individual rights and privacies. Welcome to the conclusion to the fall of the Cabal, where we will discover the true nature of the Cabal, how it is embedded in every aspect of society, and thus the immensity of the work that has to be done in the coming years to really drain the swamp. Let's start with unraveling the identity of the Cabal. We will look at it systematically, step by step, in a simple and comprehensive way. As you know, a pyramid has 3 sides, 3 points. The pyramid of the Cabal is no different. With the all-seeing eye in the middle, the Cabal dominates or rules us with 3 nails of power: finance, military, and religion. And believe it or not, these nails are located in the world's most powerful places as independent entities: the City of London, Washington DC, and Vatican City. All 3 are completely independent from their respective countries, untouchable, unimaginably powerful. They all have an obelisk in the center of their state, given to them by the Freemasonry. Let's start with the City of London, shall we? Established a few years after the Roman invasion in 50 AD on the north bank of the River Thames, it's obviously a continuation of the Roman Empire. From its early years, it has had its own mayor and governing body, called the City of London Corporation. The city covers an area of 1.1 square miles, and it is at the heart of Greater London. The corporation that rules the city is unique in its kind. It's apolitical. It has its own police force and its own courts: the Central Criminal Court, also known as the Old Bailey, and the Mayor's and City of London Court. It also has some special privileges and exemptions, such as being exempt from the Freedom of Information Act for its activities other than being a local authority, like its role in financial markets. The City of London is not an independent nation like the Vatican, so ultimately it will be accountable to the UK Parliament. But because of its special and historical status, the corporation's primary obligation is to its own electorate and members. The city runs the global financial market and London's wholesale food markets. The members of the corporation are mostly Freemasons, still called by their original names, Freemen and Liverymen. The City of London houses the privately owned Rothschild Bank of England, Lloyd's of London, the London Stock Exchange, London's foreign exchange market with a $2.9 trillion daily turnover, which is almost half of the global daily turnover, over 500 bank offices, all British banks, the insurance industry and the biggest law firms, the main fresh food markets of London, more than 300 publishing houses, and the headquarters for worldwide Freemasonry. The City of London has its own separate flag and crest, while London City does not. The Mayor of the City of London has a fancy title, the Right Honourable the Lord Mayor of London, and rides a golden carriage to Guildhall, while the separate Mayor of London, an office created only in the year 2000, wears a suit and takes a bus. Investigative financial journalist Nicholas Shaxson says, through international stock market listings, currency trading, bond issuance and more, the city handles perfectly respectable financial activity from around the world. But it is also the main nerve center of the darker global offshore system that hides and guards the world's stolen wealth. The tax revenue lost is eye-watering. Corporations use tax havens to escape paying an estimated $245 billion to $600 billion a year. But tax is only part of the story. The global game of deceit played for decades by the wealthy and their functionaries in the city has eroded the rule of law. Unaccountable and often untraceable, the system ensures that prosperity remains the preserve of the few. Let's have a closer look at how some supranational banks rule us. Have you ever heard of the Bank for International Settlements? Well, you should. The Bank for International Settlements was founded in 1930 in Basel, Switzerland, to assist Germany with the payment of reparations after World War I. As part of the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, the defeated countries of World War I were obliged to pay 132 billion gold marks as punishing reparations to the Allied powers. As soon as Hitler came to power, he cancelled the payments completely, which should have led to the dismantling of the BIS. But instead it received a new status, to become the central bank for the national central banks. As central bank for all the national central banks, it's free from all political interference, meaning it's a private bank, independent, untouchable, without any tax obligations, nor obligations to give access to documents, financial reports or anything. It remains completely free of oversight. The BIS and all its employees are untouchable, unaccountable, above any law. Its decrees are binding for national central banks, like decrees forbidding to lend low-cost money to governments. Margera, first president of the Bank for International Settlements, says in 1931, "The bank is completely removed from any governmental or political control." How can this be legal? The Bank for International Settlements drew up a set of international banking recommendations called the Basel Framework. The Basel Committee does not have the authority to pass laws in any country, so it needs the member countries to incorporate them into their national regulatory frameworks. The G10 and G20 countries simply forced it into law, with their parliamentary discussions being only about in what way banks could comply to the recommendations and to what extent the existing laws needed to be adapted. In Europe, the European Union translated the recommendations into European law, bypassing the national parliaments. The rest of the world meekly complied and followed their example. This is how one international law on finance originated, showing to us that the one world government already exists and functions fairly well. Another world war, and we have the birth of two other international banks. It must be a coincidence, but in the end days of World War II, in July 1944, the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference was held in Bretton Woods, UK, to agree upon a series of new rules for the post-World War II international monetary system. When a year later the United Nations was founded, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank were placed under its directive as its major financial agencies. The IMF's and World Bank's goal is mainly to be the global lender of last resort to national governments, which gives them unprecedented power over countries in need. The IMF supervises the monetary policies of all countries. It has the right to interfere and give directives to a country. Once a country accepts the IMF's assistance, it is obliged to fulfill the IMF's structural adjustment programs, which, to say it bluntly, tend to erode the national economy. The list of scandals and incidents is endless. Without going into the technical details, the tools the IMF uses to assist a country, like the structural adjustment programs and the allocation of SDRs, special drawing rights, make the rich countries richer and the poor countries poorer. It was President Trump who prevented an even bigger power grab by opposing the attendant SDR increase to $2.8 trillion after the COVID pandemic. This SDR increase would have led to more loans, with interest, to less developed countries, with lots of binding rules that destroy the national economies. More loans mean more debts, taking the world down into the endless debt spiral with more and more power to the banks and thus the elite. Agenda 21 in full action. Former Tanzanian President Julius Nyerere, who claimed that debt-ridden African states were ceding sovereignty to the IMF and the World Bank, famously asked, "Who elected the IMF to be the Ministry of Finance for every country in the world?" Good question. Who did? Well, nobody did. Not you and me anyway. So how do these institutions get so much power worldwide? To find an answer to that question, we will have to go to the puppet masters. This is the pyramid of power that shows us who is in charge of the world. Almost entirely at the top, you see the Council of 13. These are the 13 Illuminati bloodline families. They rule the world as if we are mere slaves and they are the masters. Their tentacles reach deep into every aspect of life. Directly underneath the Council of the 13 bloodline families, you'll find a committee of 300. What do we know about this committee? It was founded in the 17th century as the Committee of 300 of the British East India Trading Company by the British royal family. They used this company for their opium trade with China. In 1727, the British East India Trading Company continued as the Committee of 300 as we know it right now. The Committee of 300 works as the engine behind the New World Order. It controls the global bank cartel that we've just seen, all major corporations and secret societies. 300 men who all know each other direct the economic destinies of the continent, and they look for successors among their friends and relations. Walter Rathenau, 1909. The Committee of 300 is the leading organization behind the Club of Rome, the United Nations, NATO, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, Tavistock Institute, the Bilderberg Group, and so forth and so on. Its members are representatives of the 13 bloodlines, the European royal families and black nobility, added with some powerful commoners, as they used to call people outside the bloodlines, the CEOs of the world's largest companies. The head of the committee has always been the King or Queen of England. According to H.G. Wells, a former member of the Committee of 300, the committee's goal is a totalitarian one-world government. Former British MI6 intelligence officer Dr. John Coleman describes 21 goals of the Committee of 300. One world, one government, one currency, one church, one religion. Further on, Dr. Coleman wrote, "At least 4 billion useless eaters shall be eliminated by the year 2050 by means of limited wars, organized epidemics of fatal rapid-acting diseases, and starvation. Energy, food and water shall be kept at subsistence levels for the non-elite, starting with the white populations of Western Europe and North America, and then spreading to other races. The population of Canada, Western Europe and the United States will be decimated more rapidly than on other continents until the world's population reaches a manageable level of 1 billion, of which 500 million will consist of Chinese and Japanese races, selected because they are people who have been regimented for centuries and who are accustomed to obeying authority without question." Meet Zbigniew Kazimierz Brzezinski, a Polish-American diplomat and political scientist. He was President Johnson's advisor and national security advisor for President Carter. He was a prominent member of the Club of Rome, a member of the Committee of 300, a member of the Council of Foreign Relations, and a member of the ancient Polish black nobility. Brzezinski stated, "Unhindered by the restraints of traditional liberal values, the elite would not hesitate to achieve its political ends by using the latest modern techniques for influencing public behavior and keeping society under close surveillance and control." Brzezinski continues, "It will soon be possible to assert almost continuous control over every citizen and to maintain up-to-date files containing even the most personal details about health and personal behavior of every citizen, in addition to the more customary data. These files will be subject to instantaneous retrieval by the authorities. Power will gravitate into the hands of those who control information. Our existing institutions will be supplanted by pre-crisis management institutions, the task of which will be to identify in advance likely social crises and to develop programs to cope with them." Well, doesn't it sound like his blueprint has been implemented in the previous years precisely as he wanted, and even worldwide? What immense power does this committee have? The members of the Committee of 300 are reappearing everywhere, as the committee is the umbrella organization for all world-leading think tanks as the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission. The Bilderberg Group, with its annual secret meetings, was envisioned by Dr. Josef Rettinger, alleged spy and top advisor of General Władysław Sikorski, head of the Polish government in exile in London during World War II. It were Prince Bernhard, German husband of Queen Juliana of the Netherlands, who also lived in exile in London during World War II, and Paul Rykens, the founding chairman of Unilever, who founded the Bilderberg Group in May 1954 in Hotel Bilderberg in Oosterbeek, the Netherlands. The meetings have always been very secret. Discussions are held under the Chatham House rule, meaning no statements of any kind are allowed to be made to the press. There are no meeting minutes taken. Attendees are entitled to use information gained at these meetings, but not attribute it to a named speaker. This should ensure open and free discussions, but critical thinkers state that the members are freely discussing our demise. Fact is that when you are invited to the Bilderberg meetings, you can expect a major career boost as Cabal puppets. The Council on Foreign Relations is a spin-off from the Institute of International Affairs, an Anglo-American intelligence organization formed after the World War I peace treaty in Versailles in 1919. Later on, the British branch split off into the Royal Institute of International Affairs, also known as the Chatham House, and the American branch became the Council on Foreign Relations. The goal of the Council is to inform the government about international political affairs, a fancy term for spying. Its members include senior politicians, secretaries of state, CIA directors, bankers, lawyers, professors, corporate directors, CEOs and prominent media figures. The Council is heavily financially supported by the Ford Foundation and Rockefeller Foundation, with David Rockefeller even becoming director of the CFR in 1949. The Council's main reports are about threats of wars and peace. The Council on Foreign Relations is an NGO, a non-governmental organization. The Trilateral Commission was founded in 1973 by David Rockefeller and Henry Kissinger. It entails the cooperation between North America, Europe and Asia Pacific. The Trilateral Commission, also an NGO, represents influential commercial and political interests, a high-rank lobby group, so to speak. The members and former members include leading figures in politics, intelligence, business, media and academia. This is the deep state, ruling the world, free from any democratic interference. A report from the Trilateral Commission in 1975 stated, "The vulnerability of democratic government in the US comes not primarily from external threats, though such threats are real. Not from internal subversion from the left or right, although both possibilities could exist, but rather from internal dynamics of democracy itself in a highly educated, mobilized and participant society." Noam Chomsky says about the Trilateral Commission, "They felt free to let their hair down and to talk openly about the need for an increasingly active and defiant public to be reduced back to its proper state of apathy and obedience, lest it continue to use democratic means to deprive them of their power." In his 1980 book, With No Apologies, Republican Senator Barry Goldwater suggested that the discussion group was a skillful, coordinated effort to seize control and consolidate the four centers of power, political, monetary, intellectual and spiritual, in the creation of a worldwide economic power superior to the political governments of the nation-states involved. The fact that these committees, commissions, groups, think tanks and more are membered by the elites of this world tell us a lot about their goals. This is the deep state, the unseen one-world government. They are unelected, free from any electoral or democratic process and untouchable within their NGOs. They are ministers and presidents of countries, CEOs of banks, media and NGOs. They are lawyers, professors and intelligence officers. Their decrees and treaties, brought into the world by organizations as the UN, WHO and NATO, overrule constitutions no matter what. We've seen it happen over and over again in the last couple of years. Is there more to know about the identity of the Cabal? What about Washington, D.C. and the Vatican? How do they contribute to the one world government? Let's investigate it further in part 2 of this conclusion to the fall of the Cabal.